We're in for a fun hour, I hope. I hope I don't bore you all too much. Um, MacAdmins, they run a really good conference, and I was looking at the stats of the top 50 most interesting or most highly attended presentations, and this was not on it. So you are in a small group. In fact, Greg Nagel's redo of his presentation from the other day got number 47, and so I'm trying not to let my pride, get to me. No, really, I'm happy you're all here. I want to caveat some things before we go in. Management is very subjective. Everyone has their own style. It's like me trying to tell you to change your personality. So please don't feel that I'm telling you exactly what I think you should do. There's one section in the middle where I'm pretty firm on these things are bad, but you got to do it. So I hope to give you something that will help you, give you some things to learn from and make you a better manager. I'm thinking some of you are in management. Anybody in management? Anybody want to be in management? Is that why you're here? Cool. Glad it seems like a 50-50 mix. Give you an overview of what's going on, and then we'll get right in it. One of the things I love about this place is you start on time and you end on time. So we're going to plow through, and I'm going to leave some room at the end for questions. In fact, let's see if I can get the little thingy to work here. I have ADD pretty bad, and so stopping me in the middle to ask me questions is going to just kind of make this more haphazard than it already is. So if you wouldn't mind using your device, go and ask a question on the website, and then when we get to the end, we'll knock them out. And maybe, if I did a good enough job, I'll answer your questions by the time we get to the Q&A, and we'll be good. In preparing for this, I started, collecting all these little nuggets and went back and reviewed it and bored myself silly. So I'm going to do what I do best. I'm going to tell some stories, and they're going to have things that I've learned in them, and hopefully it won't bore you too much. But just know that management can be boring. The views in this presentation are my own and not those of my employer. I would like to have a job when I return to Florida State. Nothing in this presentation should be considered legal advice. Laws vary from state to state. Please consult an attorney and your own HR department. Use at your own risk. Please do your own research. Extended exposure to HR and management materials may cause drowsiness. If tingling or numbness lasts more than 4 hours, please see a physician. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this presentation without the express written consent of Major League Baseball is prohibited. All right, so a little about me. I've been a Mac user since 1998, using a Mac Plus at a friend's house because I couldn't afford my own. Since then, I've owned 16 different Macs, and I built a hideous contraption using a power computing motherboard I bought on eBay. Anybody remember power computing? Here we go. I've been happily married for 10 years this go-around. I live with my wife in Tallahassee, Florida, working for Florida State University since 1998. Before then, I co-owned a PC support business. I've done some contract work for HP and Apple. I worked as a director at a broadcast television station. I've worked various jobs in grocery stores growing up. And so there's a little bit of everything getting mixed in here today. Let's see here. I also do want to encourage you to, if possible, to put away your devices and be present. Don't worry about trying to take notes or anything because we're going to post it all online. They're recording it, much to my chagrin, so you'll be able to watch all my mistakes later. If you have something that needs to be done, please try to do so without distracting anyone around you. I know this is a work day. I had to knock out an Excel sheet yesterday in the Apple presentation, but if possible, try to focus. I tinkered with a Raspberry Pi running Kali before I came here and some software that would boot everybody off the Wi-Fi, but I hope to come back here someday, so I left it at home. And that's really more hammer than, or more stick than carrot. So, all right. My first exposure to organized management that I really remember is in high school in ROTC. The military has been leading people for centuries, and they really have their stuff down. Some may call it cold and heartless, but for the job that our military does, there's nothing better. It's efficient, it's thought out, it works well. In high school, it helps to establish the pecking order. Everyone knows where you were in the chain, who was your boss, and who wasn't. Success was rewarded with promotion, but there's a definite lack of conversation. But you did really have to think about your questions. When a senior officer was yelling at you, you needed to think really clearly. Cadet requests permission to leave the room, sir. No. You need to ask your question succinctly, get an answer, go do it. In IT, it doesn't work that well because we like collaboration and we like these situations where it's like, I'm not really your boss, I'm just kind of your buddy, and let's get the job done and go team. My next exposure was working in a grocery store. They have an organized power structure, and it was my introduction to the corporate machine. But they had a very documented training process and structure. I still remember a training film that I had to watch for bagging groceries called Bag It Right. And there is a link in the resources. So after you've had a few drinks, go on YouTube and watch it. You will remember it the rest of your life. I'd worked in a grocery store later for about 6 months. It was a very physically demanding job and exhausting, but we were inside, so I didn't get sunburn or heat stroke. One night, my manager decides to leave his girlfriend and move across country, and he was gone. So the store manager comes to me and offers me the job. This guy did not take crap from anybody. He was missing a couple teeth, had been kicked out of Israel for something that he wouldn't tell us about. He was the kind of guy that did not take any mess. He wanted everyone to work hard, and if you said, I'm tired today, that did not go over well. But this was another one of those jobs where the hardest worker got promoted. My only management experience at this point was high school ROTC, and now I'm the manager of this crew. 19 years old, 10 guys from 18 to 57 years old. I got a small raise, but I got some of the best management advice out of that job. He said, Drew, don't take S from anyone. If somebody looks at you wrong, fire them. If they show up late, fire them. They locked us in at night. This was on the night crew. And so we couldn't get out unless there was a fire, and we had to push the emergency exit to get out, and the cops would show up. Boss told me, Drew, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning. You call me. I'll come up here, open the door, and you fire them. Now, that wasn't really the best part, but this was the good part. He said, Drew, as long as you're half right, I got your back. I was in that store by myself with those guys. I had an idea of how to manage people, but not really. But this was very freeing for me because I didn't have to second guess every decision I was making. I just had to try to do the right thing, and I knew that he would back me up. He said, somebody yells at you and you yell back at them and you want to fire them, great. We'll talk to you later about what happened. But in front of the crew, I've got your back. And so that has stuck with me for years. And sure enough, they kept their word. I worked there for a while. They groomed me into being a store manager. And I probably would have stayed in that career, except I really wanted a job in technology. And there was another thing that I learned at this job, that I'm going to be good at a lot of different things, and just because I'm good at it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be my job. And when I think about crews where they promote people that are good, it just kind of made me think about some of these things. So I worked there for a while, but I also saw that some of those managers were working 100-hour weeks, and I wanted to have a family someday, and so I just kind of figured, this isn't for me. And I don't want to trash a grocery store. As you can tell, I'm a fan. We all go there, and when they're being run well, it's great. So, let me get to the right slide here. So I got a job in television. Had a roommate who worked there, got me an interview, it was great. I was excited to be in a tech job. Get to my first day, and it was like, show up and we're gonna go. I get in the studio, they show me how to use the camera. He's like, put on the headset, we're gonna start. Now, it wasn't a regular day, it was Labor Day weekend, 1995, and at this television station, they did the Jerry Lewis telethon. So it was kind of abnormal, we got a lot of stuff going on. Put on the headset, it's time to come to us, and I screw up immediately. And the director starts yelling at me on the headset. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but I'm panicking, got the adrenaline going. I can't even repeat one of the sentences he said to me. We get through the 5-minute thing, we get out, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be fired on my first day. And my buddy's sitting there, he's on headset, he's like, oh, don't worry about him, that guy's in. Really nasty word I'm not gonna repeat since we're being recorded. I'm thinking, this is the guy who's in charge of the shift, and in 5 minutes working here, I've been told to disregard him. He helps me out, I kind of learn a little bit. 30 minutes, we do the next cut in, slightly less swearing, but still a lot. And by the end of the day, I thought about quitting. Someone reminded me though later, he's like, this guy isn't our normal director. He works nights, you're gonna be on mornings. And I stayed. Most of the other directors were pretty sarcastic and grumpy. And it was a bad experience for a while. I think, looking back at it, the part that made it really bad is that while I was in the studio, I couldn't fight back. He's on the intercom just unleashing a barrage of insults, and I had to take it. I had left a job in management, and here I am in this thing, and I'm like, did I just make a huge mistake? But I stuck it out, and a year later, I was directing him behind the mic. And I tried to go for more funny than mean, but there was still a lot of sarcasm in there. But I found out I was doing a good job because I went on vacation. And when I came back, one of the girls in the studio hugged me and said, you can't leave ever again. Your fill-in was horrible. But the thing that came out of that was, you may think yelling at your staff makes you a badass, but nobody respects you. I left and went to Florida State. I've had a lot less stress, and it's kind of a different tempo. Instead of your whole job being compressed, it's kind of spread out more evenly during the day. Worked with some really great people, and I've loved it there. When I make a mistake at my job now, 300,000 people don't watch it on their TV. So that's a plus. I started managing a team of student workers who would do this newfangled thing where we videotaped engineering classes and mailed VHS tapes to them to watch. This was back in '98. Later, we went to web streaming with this thing called Real Player. Anyone heard of that? It was the future. But this was another one of those situations where we promote the best workers, but maybe we should promote managers, because it's a different skill set. So I'm gonna go sideways for a little bit because some stuff happened in my life that affected how I manage. It was the year 2000, I'm having problems in my marriage. I'm thinking, who taught me to be a good husband? Really, nobody had. I just watched my dad. I was very sarcastic, I had a bad temper. I liked to swear when I was in an argument. A friend of mine gave me a book on being a good husband, and I read it one afternoon and figured, no wonder my wife wants to leave. I'm horrible at this. Everything I knew in a confrontation was wrong, and so I tried to stop doing these things. Now, this is the part where these next few slides are the part that if I was going to really tell you how to do your job, this is it. Everything else you can mold and shape and glean for yourself. But these next few slides, they're real basic, but it's changed everything about my management. No sarcasm. And I'm thinking, what? This is ridiculous. When I was 8 years old, my older brother moved out and left me a huge stack of Mad magazines. I have been speaking sarcasm since 1984. Most of the time it gets a laugh. When I applied as an undergrad to FSU, I put sarcasm as my foreign language. I was fluent, but sarcasm is not a tool, it is a weapon. Now, if I'm joking around with people and we're having a good time, that's one thing. But when I need to tell my wife something or when I need to tell an employee something, sarcasm is not allowed. And I really think back to those times in the television studio getting assaulted through my earphones, and I vowed not to put anyone I care about in that position. Number 2, no swearing. I love to swear. I love swearing in front of people that don't like to swear. Me and the neighbor kids, when I was young, used to practice swearing so much squirrels would fall out of trees. But it's the same thing. When I'm in a discussion, it's got to go. Name calling. You stupid, moronic imbecile. How could you F up so much? Are you retarded? All this does is turn off the part of the recipient's brain used for problem solving and activates a defense mechanism. So I'm not talking about the action that was wrong. I am talking about the person when I'm name calling. Looking back now, I've never gotten a real serious answer out of somebody when I start a question like that. Name calling had to go. Yelling. Yelling is used very successfully in the military, but that is a life or death situation, and that is totally different from having a marital argument or being at work. Yelling activates adrenaline, and instead of calmly responding, it's fight or flight. This goes without saying, no hitting. No matter how mad I get, I can't hit her. I can't hit anything else. Getting physically violent is not conversation. I've never hit my wife, but I used to throw stuff. I used to punch walls. So why am I telling you this marriage stuff? Looking back in my early attempts at management, I think the reason I wasn't successful with more of my employees is because I didn't understand the relationship. I was trying to code. If you do this, then I will be happy. If you don't do this, then I frown. If you don't do this twice, then I yell. If you don't do this 3 times, then I fire you. It's a cut and dried while loop. But I'm dealing with people. In trying to be a better husband, I became a better manager. My boss teases me now that I give kindergarten instructions to my staff. These things are things that we all learned at 4. I don't care. I may sound like Mr. Rogers, but so what? That guy is hip now. I have a relationship with my employees, and I want it to be healthy and productive. I do not want them to be afraid of failure. I want them to feel safe admitting mistakes or that they don't know something. I want them to tell me when they screw up before I hear it from a customer. I want them to know that they're not going to get yelled at and that they're safe. Here's the flip side of that. I had a younger employee complain to me about one of my older guys. He had submitted some information for a DHCP request and it was wrong. The young guy comes to me and says, I didn't like his tone. He disrespected me. All right, what do you do? He went on and on about how I screwed up the request and needed to change this and do this. All right, let's break it down. Did he yell at you? No. Did he swear at you? No. Was he sarcastic or snarky? No. Did he call you a moron? No. Did he hit you? No. Did he tell you did a bad job? Yeah. Did you do a bad job? Yeah. Well, guess what? He gets to say that. You were supposed to give him the information he needed, and you didn't do it. His job is to keep track of all that information, and you made his job harder. If he steps out of line one thing, I will be the first one to call HR. But until then, do a good job. Breaking it out, it kind of makes sense. It sucks when somebody yells at you or doesn't yell at you and even just tells you, you aren't awesome. You did not do a good job. It stings, but we have to hear it. And then we move on. Some of my younger employees have been told they're great their entire life. But hearing you're great doesn't mean anything unless you've also heard honestly when you suck. I want every employee to be great as long as they really are great. I ended up getting divorced. I spent some time trying to improve myself. And I've also incorporated some of the principles of recovery into my life. I'm not an alcoholic, but I do tend to be codependent, and we'll get into that more a little bit later. But in some small group meetings, there are things like we need to keep confidentiality. We need to allow others to speak without interruption and without monopolizing the conversation. And we need something called rigorous honesty. It's a cousin of brutally honest, but it's not the same thing. It's speaking the truth clearly, even when it's difficult to say. The goal of recovery is to seek out and eliminate resentment. When working in IT, I have found tons of resentments in my career. For example, I had a sign at the TV station you might have seen other places. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. As good as I felt hanging that sign, it never stopped anyone from showing up at the last minute. And at times, I was powerless to say no. Ever had this happen in IT? A user with incomplete or no backup has their computer compromised. The correct thing to do would be wipe and reload, but the user has to have all their data. Do you have a backup? No, just copy it off of the thing. So instead of spending an hour doing a wipe and load, we have to spend 3 days trying to clean up the OS and then run 4 different AV products to find the thing that broke it. Oh yeah, I need it in 45 minutes because I'm leaving the country. They didn't have the backup. They clicked the link. They caused this whole thing, and now it's my problem. This is the recipe for resentment. And 2 months later, they're going to click another link and do it again. Now I try my hardest to avoid doing anything that causes a resentment. Someone comes in with a PC like this, and I say, I'm sorry, this is going to take longer than you have. You can have a clean OS with no data. We can give you a loaner and work on this. I can FedEx you a USB stick. But nobody's going to work 40 hours straight to get this done. For me, what causes a lot of resentment is when other users do stuff like this and then escape the consequences. My life is hard enough already, and then these people are the ones that always seem to get new PCs and new stuff. If you would have just put your files in OneDrive like we asked you, I could have rolled you out a machine like this and you could be sitting at the airport getting your files. But you didn't do it, and now you're screwed. So I try to let these people be screwed. I'm going to work as hard as I can, and I'm going to do what's possible, but you're not going to make me the scapegoat. Some users think that they need to yell at entry-level technicians because that'll get them in their way. My guys know, call me on my cell phone and walk out. Yell at me if you want, if you dare. But guess what? You're not allowed to yell at me either, and I'll leave. You want to calmly discuss your situation? That's great. But an action you did caused this. It's horrible, and I'm sorry you're going through this. We're going to do what we can. And maybe if you follow our directions in the future, things like this will be easier. Resentments are like splinters. They cause normal actions to be overreacted to. Say I have a splinter in my hand, and we go to shake hands. Shaking hands is a normal thing. But when you shake hands with someone with a splinter, you're causing them pain. And the guy with the splinter is like, that's the 50th time today someone's hurt me. You had no idea. I'm the one with the splinter, and I'm the one who needs to get it out. The 50th time someone clicks a link and gets Mac Keeper, I want to just breathe fire. For the customer, it's the first time or the second time. They didn't mean to. But I'm overreacting because I haven't dealt with this stuff. I'm going to do my best, but I also need to not let these things build up. Being professional doesn't mean coddling customers. Being in IT is not a license to be mean to customers. If I can be professional and still communicate with no resentment, then I'm doing a good thing. Sometimes I have to reach out to my team and say, I can't take another one of these. This is not a good day. I need some help. So I have to reach out and use my team. Something I learned in marriage counseling, you cannot be a good partner if you are not a healthy individual. If I'm not healthy and functioning, I can't do my share. That whole you complete me thing in Jerry Maguire is BS. Your completeness complements my completeness doesn't really roll off the tongue. It's the same thing at work. If you have an employee who's not fully functioning adult, they are not going to contribute effectively. And people whose identity is how hard they work might be running from something. I had a guy in a call center. He was a decent employee, but he started showing up late regularly, sometimes with no notice. So I went through the HR process, and when he was late, we stopped letting him take leave, and he had to be leave without pay. After the HR rep goes back to her office, I asked the employee, I'm like, what's going on? I don't need the whole story, but something's up. He says, I've got some roommate drama. I can't get this guy out of my apartment. I'm like, well, take the rest of the week off and use vacation for it, get it handled, then come back to work. After that, didn't have any problems. He got a better job in 6 months and wasn't late once before then. You might be thinking, Drew, why didn't you talk to him before you called HR? Well, say I had done that. I just talked to the guy, and things were fine for 2 weeks, and then they got bad again. So that happens a few more times, and maybe more severely than the other time. What I found out is building documentation is the only way to get HR to do anything. So if I bring him in for a counseling session and it goes well, then that's it. That's the end of it. But if I didn't, then here I am a year later, ready to just let the guy go. I call HR and they say, this is the first we're hearing about this. Let's start with an oral reprimand. You're being a little hasty. Termination is not where we are. So I'm stuck for another year. The employee is like, well, I got away with that. And the other employees are like, why am I working so hard? There's a fine line between understanding and enabling. So now we're into human resources. They have the most difficult job in your organization, even over facilities. I would rather clean toilets than sit through 8 hours of interviews. But if I did not have good HR folks, my life would be even worse. If someone has a problem because we don't have enough storage, I'll go buy it. I may have to research a little and see what's available, check some pricing, call some other folks who've used products like it before, and I'll make the best choice I can. I may have to do a little grunt work, go outside myself, but I'll do it. If the resource that I'm lacking is human, it feels different. But I'm going to tell you, it's the same benefit. The time I've spent researching and learning how to shop for this type of resource has really helped the quality of people we hire. I don't have time for this crap, Drew. I'm a manager. I do not want to do boring paperwork. Well, too bad. I tell other people, my job is not to do work. It is to get work done. I have a team, and I provide what they need, and they provide what our organization needs. Had some people complain salaries are too low. All right, so my boss and I spent a few hours writing justification letters to senior management. We had to show vacation rates, retention periods, compare with external salary analysis. Takes a few months, but now the starting salary for our technicians is 20% higher than it was. One of my best technicians leaves, and when I won't go to recruit for the position, I asked for a lot of money comparable to what this guy was making. They said, no, we start at the bottom. You have one level of technician. So we spent a few more months writing a justification. We build a second level. Now when one of those guys leave, I can recruit at a higher salary. One of my other technicians in the lower levels doing good, I can promote them. There's justification for salary increase. The techs see just nothing going on until it happens to them. I had an entry-level guy wanted to move into tier 2. It took 6 months. But he got a hefty raise, and when we were done, he came and thanked me for the opportunity. And I just told him, please tell the techs that eventually we deliver. I don't promise what isn't possible, but it still takes a long time. Hiring is critically important because firing is hard. It makes it worthwhile to spend time during the hiring process. Sometimes we get 60 applicants for one position. We have to look at everything. But you know what? If none of them are good, we re-advertise. No sense wasting money trying to, shove someone in a position where they don't fit. This may sound backwards for IT, but if I have to decide between two candidates, I take the one with the stronger customer service skills. I can teach technology, or I can send you to class. I can let you do some online training. We've got Linda, everyone in the university can use it. It is a lot harder to teach someone who's rude how to be gentle. We've hired lots of ex-Chick-fil-A employees, ex-Apple employees. You guys don't have Publix up here, but it's a grocery store with really friendly people. And really, I don't care how you set up your Mac or your PC at home. You're going to follow our procedures. I don't care that you've built a PC before. You're not going to be doing that in this job. I do care how you respond to a customer yelling at you or making sure that you actually can get to work on time. Half of my hiring questions are on soft skills. Tell me about a challenge. How do you respond to this situation? I have a position where we were hiring distance learning technicians. They were going to sit in a studio and record things kind of like this. And at the end of the interview, I gave them a practical. Took them in a room with a TV, a VCR. That was the thing that I used to watch movies on. Gave them a box full of cables, and most of them were wrong. Some of them were broken. I just wanted to watch them figure it out. I wanted to hear the kind of questions they asked. One guy took 30 minutes, and I just let him go with it. Eventually, we ran out of time for the interview, and so I showed him what the solution was. He leaves. I'm looking at his resume. He's got pretty decent skills. I call him in the next week for a second interview. He comes in. He's like, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, do it again. 30 seconds later, he had it all hooked up. I hired him on the spot. Not knowing isn't a problem. Not learning is a problem. Let's take a short little break. Anyone have a smartwatch that tells them to stand up at the top of the hour? Everybody stand up for 5 seconds. We're not going to take long. Okay, stretch, get it all out, wiggle. Okay, sit down. We're going to get into the good stuff at the top of the hour, and I don't want everyone's watch to beep all at once. Okay, so some of you saw this as we were checking it before the thing. This was an interview. The guy was trying to pad his resume a little bit. I'd worked with him in another department for a while, and he had hardware experience on his resume. So I gave him a random box full of computer parts. Oops. Gave him a random box full of computer parts and said, put it together.
Why? What the heck? Oh my gosh.
I said, you got 3 minutes.
can't believe you're making me do this.
We're just drowning, Matt.
Exactly. See, hiring's important, and so take your time to do it right. When I was dating, I followed the advice of the eHarmony guy, who is a genius. I should put that on my little table topic at lunch today, eHarmony. You make a list of things you got to have, and you make a list of things you can't stand. And when I would go on dates, I would explain to people that I had a list, and we could date until they had something on the can't stand list, and then it was just going to be done. And it's easy to do it early because there's no credibility, there's no nothing. It's just like, I want the house to be clean, and I come to pick you up and your place is trashed. There's no future. But it doesn't make the person a bad person. It just meant that we weren't a good fit. And what you're looking for when you're hiring is good people, but you're looking for a good fit. Now, lying, cheating, dishonesty, stealing, all this stuff, that makes you a bad person. That's called a character defect. And you don't want to hire those, and you don't want to marry those. But you can be, there's a lot of room in that. I have employees with all sorts of different skills and interests. And sometimes someone's working for me because they need a job, and they see a position where they would be a better fit. It's more in line with their interests. And by all means, go. Let me help you. You've done a good job for me. I'll give you a good reference. If someone's got character defects, your problem. It's time to call HR. During the interview, I tell people what will get them fired. Start firing your employees during the interview. But they know. And they will tell you if they can do it or not. When I got into my current position, we had a problem with people losing customer data. And it wasn't intentional, it was just careless. A thumb drive would get lost. A user saved a file on their computer in a place we weren't expecting. I had a tech driving back on a golf cart with 15 years of email from the head of procurement, and the thing fell out. Why are we doing this way? So, boss and I write some letters and some justifications, and we get 40 terabytes of network storage. And now before we work on a computer, we do a full backup. I have had a tech rip a Wi-Fi connector off of a MacBook Pro logic board. That cost $750. We've had laptops with broken screens. We have spilled, erased, sneezed, and done everything possible to customer equipment. And I can solve all those problems with money. The thing that will get you fired is causing me a problem I can't solve with money. Losing data, I cannot throw enough money at that to fix it. If you didn't back it up, if you didn't do what you're supposed to do, don't put me in a position where I can't back you up. This is a little bit of a side note. FSU is a tobacco-free workplace. Anybody else work at something like that? Some people do smoke, but they have to go off campus, and my old building was on the edge of campus, so people would just kind of walk out in the parking lot. But anymore, I tend not to hire smokers. But I find I need a wide variety of other employees. I have a lot of white males, but we've had 40% females at some points. One of my managers prefers to hire females for an area that deals with students and problems with student computers, because he says the females listen to the customers better. One thing I found when we're hiring, and I stole this from somewhere else, have the office manager cut all the names off your resumes. Because we tend to hire people whose names sound like our own. This advice may sound great when you work for a large institution or a Fortune 500 company, but what if you work for a smaller firm? I think that's where it's hardest because everybody knows everyone, and a lot of times the boss, principal, owner may have hired everyone. Pretend you work for a large company. Read a bunch of Dilbert and Blondie comic strips. Fake it. Someone asks for a raise, tell them you got to take it to the committee. Even that committee is you and your wife. Slow down the tempo a little bit. Think, don't react. In the absence of adrenaline, the mind can work. Unless you have ADD, in that case, a lot of times adrenaline is the fuel. If you want to fire somebody, pretend you're going to court, because if you do it wrong, you will be. Collect all your documentation, your records of discipline, attendance problems. Pretend you need to ask the HR lady to do it. People like startups because they're agile, and they don't want to get bogged down in all the administrative stuff. This is great when you're trying to throw resources at a problem and it's mostly money, but there's a reason these things exist. A bad hire can cost thousands of dollars in real money and in time, in duplicate productivity where you have two people doing the job of one. Slow down, check your references, give a practical, do an exam or something, think about it. I've hired over 100 people in my career, and I've only had a few that didn't work out, and I remember all those. It's hard to admit failure at a bad hire. But when I do my homework, I get better. Everyone is replaceable. Do not let your superstar hold you hostage. No matter how much they've done for you, you can get somebody else. Ever notice how your best employees, the guy who can get the server up in a day, he's the only one who can operate this key system, but for some reason he is the worst at documenting. You may take a hit financially if you have to fire him, but I bet you morale will improve. You will learn about your operation the hard way because it will force you to, and you will learn how to make people write stuff down. Even the owner can be replaced. Don't be afraid to make the right decision. Others may not understand it, but do they have to? Another HR task that managers hate is the performance review. I used to skate by on these and just try to get them over, but one of my former supervisors really made it an event. He would send out a pre-review questionnaire. We'd schedule an hour to talk about it. It was the one time a year where I spent a whole hour with my boss talking about me. How did I do? Do you recognize what I'm doing for you? What's the plan for next year? Is it money? Is it a promotion? Now I take the time to prepare for these, and we do them. And during employee reviews, when we're discussing training, I always encourage somebody to take training in something they don't know. I had a guy, he used to fix all my Macs. I'm like, you should go to an Active Directory class. Just do something that you don't know, because it will broaden you, and I'm going to give you the time to do it, because then you'll grow. And, you know, they may find they want to do a different job. And that is much better than someone feeling that they're held back because they're the only one who can do something. I got a printer guy. He's awesome at printers, but he's afraid that we're not going to let him do anything else because there's no one else to do printers. HR has deadlines for all sorts of tasks, and I'm going to encourage you to do all of them early. Like we have 2 periods at FSU when reviews are due, and I make my managers get them done a month ahead of time. Because if there's a couple people you don't want to make angry at your organization, it's the guy who changes your trash can and your person who processes your paycheck. We get everything done early, and the HR folks like it because, and I might be projecting here, but we understand their work and we value what they do. And it's not just because there's been times where I've had to ask them for favors, but my new hire stuff always gets done when it's supposed to. So I know you might have to, grit and bear it, but get all that stuff done early. All right, so now we're at one of the funner parts. We're going to talk about normal employees, what is normal, what is not. I got diagnosed with ADD at the age of 27, which is pretty unusual. Most of the time they catch it in children. I had very strict parents, and I drank Mountain Dew by the case. I had an 8 a.m. calculus class, and the teacher's like, you can't have soda in here. I'm like, you got a cup of coffee. I've got a liter of Mountain Dew, and I've got a B in your class, so we're going to roll with this. Here's what I've learned about ADD. Multitasking is a myth, unless I initiate it. Okay, so let me explain. I was working as a director at the TV station. We had a lot of stuff going on at once. And this is back in the manual days when you actually had to push buttons. Now TV people sit and click a mouse and all the stuff does it by themselves. The cameras move, all the graphics, everything. We actually had to push buttons. I could be counting down someone into a satellite interview. I've got graphics going on over here. The producer's talking in my ear. I'm changing cameras, and all this is going at once. Now here's the flip side of that. I'm in my office now. I have a 3,000-line Excel spreadsheet open. I get a phone call from a customer. An IM from Skype pops up. There's a knock at the door. I have to physically close my eyes in order to talk to the person on the phone. There's just too much input. My watch vibrates. It's a text from my wife. I have to look up an email to talk to the customer, and oh, wait, I got 4 new emails. What are those? Something beeped. Was it the email? Was it Skype? Facebook's open in another browser. Dang it. What was I doing? Oh, yeah, email. No, wait, Excel. Boss pipes in. What's for lunch? You didn't respond to my Skype message. I go home. The wife's like, why didn't you text me back? No. When I need to focus on a necessary but boring task, I go to my office, I sign out of Skype, I close Outlook, I mute my phone. I turn on some music so that I can't hear knocks at the door. If I can get 20 minutes, then I can get it done. Sometimes I spend 20 minutes preparing to do 20 minutes worth of work. But then I'm like Neo in the Matrix, man. I can see every little thing that needs to happen. If you have an employee with ADD, one of the best things you can do is check in with them in the morning, talk to them at lunch, talk to them at the end of the day, and then leave them alone. Showing up all day long is a waste. If you give them a task they love, they'll do 20 hours straight getting it done. That's hyper-focusing. That's the other part. But when it's a boring task, just let them do it. I'm going to skip some of this boring stuff so I can stay on time. When the deadline is approaching and the pressure is on, don't stop me. I just do boring stuff in 15-minute increments. Now, this is a little out there. We're going to talk about autism. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but does any of this sound familiar? Difficulty in communicating with people, tending not to look or listen to them, making little or inconsistent eye contact, failing to respond to someone calling your name, often talking at length about a favorite subject without noticing that others are not interested, having trouble understanding another person's point of view, having a lasting intense interest in certain topics such as numbers, details, or facts, getting upset by slight changes in a routine. In learning about autism, I bet 30% of the employees I've worked with over my career are on the spectrum. My boss likes to say we're all on the spectrum. And I believe it. You know, it's all shades of gray. But the thing is, some of these things that make people socially awkward make them a great fit for IT. I have a guy who is beyond orderly. I'm not going to call him OCD, but he loves procedure and he is very detail-oriented. He keeps my network inventory. He collects all this boring data. He submits all the requests to Kocur to have network changes done. He can get a little high-strung in meetings, so we don't make him go to many. But he does awesome work, and I am very happy to have him. IT draws some awkward people for the same reason math does. The computer, for most of the time, behaves predictably. Error messages are direct and blunt, even if cryptic. You can change things and experiment. Ask questions and probe and learn. The computer doesn't get offended, it just is. Kids are falling in love with Alexa because they can just ask it questions with no judgment, even if social constraints would hold you back in a normal conversation. Alexa doesn't care if you're blunt or if you ask the same question 20 times. OCD can be great. If I have a room full of cables all over the place and someone wants to organize that, go to town. Thank you for your service. Problem happens sometimes when people get frustrated easily. I have to try to learn what's going on and diffuse the situation and understand where it's coming from. Anger gets mixed into this, and what I've learned about mine and some others is that resentment is one part, which we talked about. Codependence is another. Codependents tend to care for people and then clean up the mess. A lot of codependents in nursing and in IT, they will do the jobs nobody wants. They will try to make sure everything is great. They'll work harder than anybody else. And then people in the office get used to the fact that these guys are working the hardest. And the codependent feels ignored and neglected. And then they explode in rage when they can't take it anymore. Learning about codependency allowed me to learn about what's my problem and what isn't. What is my responsibility and what isn't. People who haven't prepared, who've slacked off and not done what they needed to do, they drive me nuts. You forgot your charger at home? You left it in the hotel at a conference? I worked at a job, I was a contractor, and someone came in and said, I left my charger. I'm like, here's the link. Go buy one. I'll let you borrow this one and charge you up once. Better overnight that new charger. Why are you making this my problem? It's bad enough that we have normal things break, but you're causing me issues. It's like when somebody says the laptop fell instead of I dropped it. Can I help you without resentment? If yes, I do it. If no, I have to think about it. But communicating helps get to the point where I can own what's mine to own, and I can let people have their consequences. It can really drive your employees nuts when they have to repeatedly do this. So we made a safe hallway. We have a hallway in our suite. Make sure no one's on speakerphone. You want to complain about a customer, go to town. 5th time he clicked on a link and lost his data, they're a moron. Don't call them a moron to their face, but we all know they're a moron. Then have a backup. Allowing people to communicate and to unload and to vent helps when they're out in the non-safe space so that it's not built up. One thing that users are surprised to hear is that their data belongs to them. This is an IT principle that I've known for years and years. Trying to communicate that to users has been a challenge. And usually the only time you get to communicate this is when they've lost all their data. It's not really the best time. OneDrive, Dropbox, something, get it backed up. And allow the text to not get to the point where they're super frustrated because they're getting pulled and called on. We had someone call. They're like, yeah, somebody else from the office is on my computer and they don't have the password for administrator. We're like, what are you talking about? So the other tech jumps in. They were on a phishing phone call and the guy was trying to install their little backdoor thing and it needed an admin password, and luckily we were able to catch it at that point. I would rather have 100 of those phone calls than one of, hey, this guy from the help desk screwed my computer up. Trying to get all those things early so that the techs don't get overwhelmed later. You know, I will be out, I'm the public face, I'll go out and talk to our customers. I feel bad, you know, my mouse is a little dirty. I don't care, put in a ticket. Anything that happens to you, put in a ticket. I don't care how trivial, just do it because I would rather talk to you now than talk to you later. And if we can address some of these easy things, we'll get it done. Cleaning up after rogue and dumb users can be can be frustrating. but the more we communicate, it helps. The other thing is that we do a lot of contract work. So we support people that aren't in our chain. And the tech will come and say, this is the 4th time this guy has screwed up his computer, and nothing's happening to him. Well, let me go talk to his boss. Hey, we're having a challenge because this one user seems to be having issues. And then I just let it go. I have to mentor our awkward, and a lot of times that awkward person is me. And I know I've kind of talked about a bunch of different things, but I'm going to summarize here. Qualities that make some people really good at IT also may make them a little difficult to work with. It's a fine dance. I expect all of my technicians to act professionally. It isn't fair if you've got 10 and 9 of them are doing great and one guy is being snippy to customers. If he says something offensive, there may not be something I can do to help him. But at the same time, I don't need a toolbox of all the same tool. I need someone who can keep my inventory. I need someone who can dig through 1,000 user groups in AD and find the problem. I don't put up with bad behavior, but I try to understand who I'm working with and try to help them succeed. Someone wants to complain that they have to visit all the grumpy people and this guy doesn't have to go out. All right, you guys want to change jobs for a day? You can do all this stuff that he does and we'll send him out. Usually it takes a day. Everybody figures out. I've got some links at the end I want you to take a look at. Learn about autism, learn about some of these other things because I think it'll help you be a better manager. And just learning about different types of people in general. All right, let's see if I can search through here a little bit. So now we're to the point that we're an hour in that you actually signed up for. Managing Macs. Before we talk about Mac techs, we're going to talk about Mac users. 10 years ago, I would have said that Mac users are absolutely difficult to manage. But in the last 10 years, market share has grown and we've got a lot of new Mac users in the fold. The older Mac user from before 2000 was the survivor. CIOs left and right have come through trying to standardize on Dell and mumbling things like Macs don't belong in the enterprise. With the growth of the consumer side, we're seeing Macs in more places. At FSU, the majority of wireless devices on campus are iOS or macOS. But that's now. Then was a different story. These folks have held on and supported themselves when no IT folks were using Macs. They've learned how to read Windows FAQs on a support site and then translate that themselves. They're used to running as administrators and roll their eyes when PC admins start freaking out. Look, macOS has had security for a while. UAC is new and it doesn't even work that great. Calm down. I know it's not a best practice, but it's not that bad. And the fact that Windows admins freak out at this just lessens their credibility when they're talking to a Mac guy. Mac guys were told, you can buy one, but don't expect any help. And we survived. Anybody remember this thing? We figured out the dip switches ourselves because no one was going to help us, and you bought us a VGA monitor instead of that Apple monitor I requested. Mac users don't like answers that go over in the PC world. Like a tech shows up and says, oh, you're having a problem? It's been a year. How about a wipe and reload? You haven't even looked at it yet. Have you tried rebooting? Look, kid, I know you have to reboot Windows just to change the date and time, but no, I haven't tried rebooting. I got 3 VMs running. It's an hour proposition. The Mac guy laughs, though, when the PC guy shows up to help him get his new Mac, and the Mac user just says, where's the Thunderbolt cable? PC guy starts, having a fit when Migration Assistant moves over his data and his apps. There's a PC version of this for when you decide to come over to the dark side. The Mac is the BMW of the PC world. Everyone else is driving a mid-sized Chevy Malibu. Last year, Dell went to Thunderbolt 3 for some docking, and PC guys are amazed, and we're like, what took you so long? When you have a Mac user with a problem, you better send a good tech. Or a Windows tech who can keep his mouth shut. They don't need a lecture from someone. A lot of times they say, just give me an admin account and go away. Many longtime Mac users have never had IT support, and now that they do, they don't know what to do with it. One of the hardest fights I have in the enterprise with Mac users is asking them to wait when a new OS comes out. We had an issue with our storage. It needed a patch. The patch had been out for 6 months, but hadn't been to a point where they could apply it. And besides, it only affects Mac users. New OS comes out, and the guy who had admin on his computer upgraded day 1, connected to the storage, and brought it down for everyone. If we could have gotten him to wait just a few days, we could have avoided that pain. Now that Macs are common, we're getting Windows defectors who are happy to just have a laptop that works and the battery lasts all day. They're a little more understanding and a little less jaded. So in managing a Mac tech, you're also managing a Mac user. Depending how long they've been a Mac user will determine their level of grumpiness. Anyone here from 100% Mac shop? Okay, that's like 4. The rest of us have to get along. We have to understand how the other side sees things. Mac techs need to understand that AD isn't going away, but server.app is. We're seeing improvements in deployments and configurations. I saw the Apple School Manager and some of the other Apple sessions here. I'm optimistic that MDM is going to be a good future. But as we're removing admin access from users, it's going to be a tough sell. I know you're capable of maintaining your machine, and you have for so long, but let us do it. You're the wrong tool. It's going to take us less time. Do you want to spend all day doing this? Have you tested any of these updates besides just, hey, I installed the new Adobe and now I can't print? You're supposed to be keeping the website up, not maintaining your computer. Let my guys do that job, and you can do what you do. And this guy costs 1/3 of what you cost. You're the wrong tool. Good Mac techs are meticulous. Mac techs who have worked for Apple, those guys are funny. You ask them how many screws are on the bottom of a MacBook Pro, and they'll tell you. There's 11, and there's 4 different sizes. Have an enterprise mindset. This is bigger than just your little work group. We have a whole big thing going on, and we need to play ball. Let me get to the thing here. I had a tech working for me who wanted to help, but it was a little unhealthy. I was new to managing this group, and I had some gaps. And I sent them all off in the morning to go work on a lab. And I checked in at lunch to see how it was going, and it was a little different than what we talked about. I asked him, okay, what's going on? He's like, well, the way you wanted it done wasn't going to work, so we did something else. So several things came to mind. First, when we were powwowing this morning was the time to tell me that. If you found out halfway through, you could have reached out. You know, this wasn't a life or death situation. You could have called, have a cell phone. But this is what I got to. I give you guys a lot of freedom. I'll tell you what I need done, and you figure out how to get there. But if I tell you this is what I want done, and you don't do it, and something goes wrong, I can't protect you. And if it goes well, then it's going to cause problems with us. But if it goes bad, I can't help you. If you do what I say and it blows up, I can protect you. I have a boss, and that boss is not you. If I screw up, he will take care of it. I don't need you to rescue me. I need you to, tell me during the feedback time, and we get to a point, you may not like the decision I make, but I need you to do it. And if it doesn't work out, my boss will handle it. But if you go out on your own, I can't shield you from that. And the problem is employees never see the manager eat it. So let them see you eat it. Another thing I've noticed in managing techs is that there's a problem, there may be 10 answers and none of us know what it is. We sit in a room and we start spitballing. Hey, I'm having this issue, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. The problem is when the techs don't understand that we're going to make a decision. And so I'll say, okay, well, I'd like you to go do this. And they go off and they try the thing that they were going to try. Because they don't understand that we went from powwow mode to time to act mode. So I had one tech that I had to get real specific. And I said, if you hear me say this, I have decided what we're going to do. That's the key for you that we're done with the powwow portion. And it's time to go do it. Doesn't work, we try something else. So I had to actually be that clear, but it helped because then we know, okay, I don't want to hear any more options, we just need to try something. Your employees have to watch you fail. And they're going to watch how you handle that. But if it's not blaming, if it's ownership, and if it's accountability, then they will trust you in that part of, I will protect you. We'll have a lot of customers come in, students need help with something, and you got 5 guys sitting around not really doing anything, and they all start doing the whole spitball thing. Computer techs were kind of used to that. Customers get overwhelmed. They're drinking from the fire hose. So we've learned, look, don't dogpile on the customer. The person they make eye contact with talks to them. Let them run through the whole scenario. If you hear them say something that's blatantly wrong, maybe say, well, I don't know if that's going to work. But let the one person have the interaction with the customer. Because, like I said, sometimes IT folks are a little awkward. When you find out someone's mad at you, go visit them in person, if you can. With the whole chat room, message board kind of thing, people get angrier than maybe is reality or angrier than they should. And having a conversation face-to-face or on the phone can calm some of that down. I told you about the free speech zone in the hallway for the techs. Make sure no one's on speakerphone. So what happens when a tech says something stupid? I had a student come in recently with a laptop that wasn't acting right, and they looked at it and it was full. So in an attempt to help the girl, the guy starts looking on the hard drive to see where all the files were. Hey, here's a folder, it's full of movies, and they're all porn. And the tech said, you shouldn't have this type of stuff on your computer. She felt judged and insulted and complained to management. All he had to say was, hey, your hard drive's full and there's a folder here that's taking up a lot of space. I couldn't protect him. And he no longer works for us. So I've tried to have some conversations with guys about how to say things. Talk about the facts. Don't talk about opinions. Sometimes employees say, oh, I'm sorry I'm late, my alarm didn't go off. The sarcastic part of me wants to say, well, I'm writing up your alarm clock then. Calm down. Say, you know, maybe you should build some margin into your life. You're gonna have traffic problems someday. You need gas in the morning, get gas at night. Try to take care of some of these things yourself. At times I can get frustrated as a manager, but as long as I don't violate my own guidelines, I'm fine. I can say what I need to say. I have a tech sometimes, hey, what's going on with this? Oh, it's done. Is it really done? Is all of it done? He wants to please and he wants to do a good job, but, oh yeah, I tested it on one VM one time. No, it's not done. Sometimes people worry about things above their pay grade. And sometimes I can tell them, and sometimes I have to say I can't talk about it. And sometimes I have to say my boss couldn't talk about it. So sometimes you'll be shared with things that are, important, or you're being given a peek behind the curtain, and confidentiality requires you to not really discuss everything. Having open communication helps, but appropriate communication. There's a line between transparency and mind your own business. All right, we had a bunch of bunny trails. I'm glad that we're at the finish line, guys. And thank you for putting up with this. We're going to summarize real quick. Remember the 5 guidelines. Love your HR department. They're there really to help you. Expand your mind. Or expand what you know about the way different minds work. Be honest and fair. Be the boss when you need to. My current boss and I go back and forth with, he's more of a collaborator and I'm more of a top-down, let's do it. And I have to temper that. Just try. Your employees won't know who's trying and who isn't. And ask for help when you need it. These references will be in the slides if you ask for them. I would watch the Bag It Right video. It's pretty funny. Let's see. Hey, we got some answers or some questions. Here we go. I'm a new manager. I have an employee who's older, who's been with the company longer than me. I've gotten complaints while I'm gone this week that he's grumpy and short with employees, but he does good with other tasks and is nice with me. How would you address this? Be straight up. I've had lots of employees who are older than me, and you can ask their opinion on some things and try to consult with them, but at the same time, they need to know the guidelines. When I took over the crew I'm with now, and I had one-on-ones with them, I explained how I was going to interact with them and how I expected them to interact with other people. And so being snarky and sarcastic and yelling, and it's all out. So sit them down, and honesty is good as long as it's not mean. So we've had some issues, we've had some questions. This is how I need this to happen, and if you can't do it, then we'll have to work through that. Do I read management books? I try not to unless I have insomnia. There's tons of good things out there. I would say find somebody you kind of respect or who is interesting to you, and see if there's things in there that fit with your personality. Like I said, the only thing I'm really on is the 5 guidelines and learning about your employees. Everything else, if you want to be more director or more collaborator, there's a place for all of that. How can you give employees constructive feedback in a safe way? People don't want to know what you think about them unless they know you care about them. And so if you have a culture of trying to help your employees go to training, trying to help them learn new things or try new things, trying to help them get in a position where they can get promotions, then it builds a rapport and they will be more open to things that you have to say to them. So that was something that I didn't get as a new manager. I thought these were all chess pieces and they just needed to move where I pushed them. But it's not. It's a relationship, and the people want to know that you care. We've got 2 more questions left, and I'm sorry we're not going to get to them because we have 55 seconds. But I will be around. Please come talk to me at lunch or anytime you want to see me. I'd be happy to talk to you forever. I want to thank lots of people. I had some great managers that I've been able to glean from, and I really appreciate everything I learned from them. Thanks to the MacAdmins staff who took a chance on someone like me and let me actually talk to you guys for an hour and a half. And this is the most important. Please, feedback on these sessions is vital. They really do look at it. If you have a minute, fill out the survey when you get it or take the picture of the thing. And thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.